homeless man stepped forward, hesitant yet desperate, as Cristiano Ronaldo walked by. What happened next wasn't just unexpected. It left everyone speechless and changed the lives of those involved forever. It was a bright afternoon in Lisbon, the streets buzzing with life. The aroma of fresh pastries from nearby cafes mixed with the faint saltiness of the ocean breeze. Tourists meandered through the cobblestone alleys, their laughter blending with the honks of taxis and the chatter of street vendors. Among them, unnoticed by most, sat a man in his mid-50s on the edge of a stone bench. His clothes were worn, layers of mismatched fabric that barely kept out the chill. A small cardboard sign rested against his knees, with the words, "In need of help," scrawled in uneven handwriting. His face was weathered, his gray beard unkempt, and his eyes told the story of countless nights spent under the open sky. Around him, the world moved on, oblivious to his quiet presence. At that moment, Cristiano Ronaldo, dressed casually in a sleek black jacket and jeans, strolled down the street. A few people recognized him, their faces lighting up with excitement. But he didn't seem to mind the occasional requests for selfies or handshakes. He was here on a rare day off, blending in as much as a global superstar could, enjoying the simplicity of walking through familiar streets. As Ronaldo walked past the bench, his steps slowed. Something about the man caught his attention. Maybe it was the way the man's gaze lingered on the ground as though he were invisible, or perhaps it was the quiet dignity with which he held himself despite his circumstances. Ronaldo glanced back, his sharp eyes taking in the scene. Nearby, a child tugged at his mother's hand, pointing at Ronaldo with excitement. Street musicians played a lively tune on the corner, their energy contrasting sharply with the stillness of the man on the bench. The world around seemed vibrant and alive, yet for this man it was as though the colors had dulled, the sounds softened into a distant hum. Ronaldo took a few more steps, but couldn't shake the image of the man from his mind. Something about him stood out, not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that whispered for it. And as he paused, the man on the bench lifted his head, their eyes meeting for just a moment. It wasn't just a glance, it was a connection, a silent exchange that sparked something inside Ronaldo. This wasn't going to be just another ordinary walk through the streets of Lisbon. What started as a fleeting moment was about to turn into a story no one would forget. As Ronaldo's gaze lingered on the man, something about the scene tugged at his heart. He didn't know the man's story, but he didn't need to. The tired slump of his shoulders and the faint sadness in his eyes spoke louder than words. For someone who had everything, fame, fortune, success, Ronaldo couldn't ignore the stark contrast in front of him. The man glanced around, his gaze drifting to the passing crowd, as if hoping someone might notice him. Occasionally, a pedestrian would glance his way, their eyes flickering with discomfort before quickly turning away. It was a look the man had grown used to. He hesitated, but didn't really see him. He clutched the small cardboard sign, his knuckles turning white from the effort, as though holding onto it gave him a shred of dignity in a world that often stripped it away. Ronaldo hesitated, torn between moving on and doing something. He wasn't in the habit of drawing attention to himself, especially in situations like this. He knew that even the smallest gesture could quickly turn into a spectacle, but something about this moment felt different. This wasn't just about giving money or food. It was about reminding someone that they mattered. Before Ronaldo could decide, the man looked up and their eyes met again. There was a flicker of hesitation in the man's expression, as if he wasn't sure whether to speak. Finally, gathering his courage, he stood up. He wasn't much taller standing than he had been sitting, his frail frame betraying years of hardship. "Excuse me," the man said, his voice raspy but steady. "I don't mean to bother you, but can you help me?" The words hung in the air, simple yet heavy. Around them, the bustling crowd seemed to fade into the background, the noise dimming as if the world had paused for this moment. Ronaldo took a step closer, his brow furrowing as he looked into the man's eyes. There was no anger there, no resentment, only a quiet plea for help. The man continued, his hands trembling slightly as he held onto his sign. "I lost my job a few years ago. I've been trying, but it's hard to get back on your feet when you've fallen this far." His voice cracked, but he pushed on. "I just need a little help to get through the day." Ronaldo's heart ached at the raw honesty in the man's words. He thought about his own journey, how far he had come from humble beginnings. He remembered his mother working tirelessly to support the family, the sacrifices they'd made to give him a chance at his dream. He couldn't imagine what it would feel like to lose everything with no one to turn to. Nearby, a few people started to notice the interaction. Whispers rippled through the crowd as they realized who the man was speaking to. Some reached for their phones, ready to capture the moment, while others simply watched, their curiosity piqued. Ronaldo ignored them. This wasn't about the cameras or the attention. It was about the man in front of him, who had taken a risk by asking for help. Ronaldo took a deep breath, his decision already made. "You're not bothering me," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Let's figure this out together." The man's eyes widened, disbelief washing over his face. He had expected to be ignored or dismissed, as he so often was. Instead, he found himself standing in front of one of the most famous men in the world, who wasn't just listening, but genuinely cared. It was a moment that neither of them would forget, one that would change the course of their lives, and the lives of those watching, forever. Ronaldo didn't hesitate for long. "Come with me," he said firmly, motioning for the man to follow. The man hesitated, looking around nervously at the growing crowd of onlookers. "It's okay," Ronaldo added, his voice calm and reassuring. "We'll figure something out together." The man nodded slowly, clutching his worn-out sign tightly as he followed Ronaldo down the street. People around them began to whisper, some pulling out their phones to record the moment. A few curious passers-by even trailed behind at a distance, wondering what Ronaldo was about to do. As they walked, Ronaldo glanced over at the man. "What's your name?" he asked. "Luis," the man replied. "Luis Costa." Ronaldo smiled. "All right, Luis, let's start with something simple. Have you eaten today?" Luis shook his head, his eyes darting to the ground as though ashamed to admit it. "Not since yesterday," he murmured. Ronaldo's expression hardened with determination. "Then let's fix that first." They stopped at a small cafe, its windows glowing warmly in the afternoon light. Ronaldo held the door open for Luis, who hesitated for a moment before stepping inside. The smell of fresh bread and coffee filled the air, and Luis blinked as if he hadn't been in a place like this in a long time. Ronaldo led him to a table near the back, away from the growing attention outside. He waved over a waiter, who approached hesitantly, clearly aware of who Ronaldo was. "Bring him whatever he wants," Ronaldo said, gesturing toward Luis. "And a coffee for me." Luis looked at the menu, his hands trembling as he held it. I don't know what to pick," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Pick anything," Ronaldo said gently. "This is about you, Luis. Take your time." After a moment, Luis settled on a simple sandwich and a bowl of soup. As they waited for the food, Ronaldo leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "Tell me your story," he said, his tone quiet but sincere. "How did things get to this point?" Luis hesitated, his eyes darting to the table as if the weight of the question was too much. But then, slowly, he began to speak. He talked about how he had once been a factory worker, supporting his family with a steady job. But when the factory closed down, everything changed. He'd struggled to find work, taking odd jobs that barely paid enough to get by. One setback led to another, a missed rent payment, a broken-down car, until he found himself on the streets, with nothing left but his pride and his cardboard sign. As Luis spoke, Ronaldo listened intently, his face a mix of empathy and determination. "You've been through a lot," Ronaldo said, when Luis finally fell silent. "But you're still here. That says a lot about you." Luis blinked, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I don't know why you're doing this," he said, his voice cracking. "You don't even know me." "I don't need to know you to help," Ronaldo replied simply. "I've been blessed with more than I could ever need. The least I can do is share it." The food arrived, and Luis ate slowly, as if savoring every bite. Ronaldo, meanwhile, pulled out his phone and began making calls. Luis watched curiously, but didn't ask questions. When Ronaldo finished, he looked up and smiled. "We're not done yet," he said. As they left the cafe, Ronaldo led Luis to a nearby clothing store. "You need a fresh start," he said as they walked inside. "Let's start with how you look." Luis stared in disbelief as Ronaldo waved over an employee. "Get him what he needs," Ronaldo said, his tone firm but kind. "Shirts, pants, shoes, the works." Luis tried to protest. "This is too much," he said, shaking his head. "I can't let you," Ronaldo cut him off with a raised hand. "This isn't charity, Luis. It's a chance. Everyone deserves one." The employee quickly gathered items, and soon Luis was in a dressing room, trying on clothes that fit him properly for the first time in years. When he stepped out, wearing a simple but clean shirt and pants, he looked like a different man. Even he seemed startled by his reflection in the mirror. As they left the store, Ronaldo turned to Luis. "There's one more thing we need to do," he said. "But you'll have to trust me." Luis nodded, his earlier hesitation replaced with quiet determination. "I trust you," he said. Ronaldo led him to a nearby community center, where he introduced Luis to a man named Joao, who ran a program that helped people get back on their feet. Joao shook Luis's hand warmly. "We'll help you find work, a place to stay," he said. "You're not alone in this." Luis looked at Ronaldo, his voice shaking with emotion. "Why are you doing all this?" he asked again. Ronaldo placed a hand on Luis's shoulder. "Because someone believed in me when I had nothing," he said. "And now it's my turn to do the same for you." The rising action wasn't just about Ronaldo's actions. It was about the hope he ignited in Luis and the way people around them reacted. From the cafe staff to the clothing store employees and even Joao at the community center, everyone who witnessed Ronaldo's kindness felt inspired to do more. The ripple effect had begun, and it was only the start of something much bigger. Luis couldn't believe how much his life had changed in just a few hours, from sitting invisible on the street to standing in a community center surrounded by people who genuinely wanted to help him. It all felt like a dream, but the biggest surprise was yet to come. Ronaldo had stepped aside to take a call, leaving Luis to talk with Joao, the community center director. Joao explained the next steps: temporary housing, job training, and counseling. Luis listened, nodding, though he still struggled to believe any of this was real. When Ronaldo returned, he had a small smile on his face, but there was something in his eyes, an intensity, a purpose. "Luis," he said, "I need you to come with me one more time." Luis blinked, confused. "Where are we going?" "You'll see," Ronaldo said, his tone calm but firm. "Just trust me." Luis hesitated for a moment but then nodded. "All right. Because I believe in second chances, Luis, and I want to show you something that I think will change the way you see yourself." The car pulled up in front of a modest apartment building. Ronaldo led Luis inside, up a flight of stairs, and stopped at a door marked 3B. He handed Luis a key. "What's this?" Luis asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Open it," Ronaldo said, his smile gentle but encouraging. With trembling hands, Luis inserted the key and turned it. The door swung open to reveal a small but fully furnished apartment. There was a cozy living room, a kitchen stocked with basic groceries, and even a bedroom with clean linens neatly folded on the bed. Luis stood frozen in the doorway, his eyes darting from one corner of the apartment to another. I don't understand," he stammered. "Is this mine?" Ronaldo nodded. "It's yours, Luis, for as long as you need it. The community center will help you transition when you're ready. But for now, this is your space, a fresh start." Luis's knees buckled slightly, and he leaned against a doorframe, tears streaming down his face. "I don't deserve this," he said, his voice breaking. "I've made so many mistakes. I've lost so much." Ronaldo stepped forward, placing a hand on Luis's shoulder. "We've all made mistakes," he said softly, "but what matters is what you do next. This isn't about your past, Luis. It's about your future, and I believe in you." Luis shook his head, overcome with emotion. "I don't know how to thank you," he whispered. "You don't have to thank me," Ronaldo replied. "Just use this opportunity. Believe in yourself as much as I believe in you." At that moment, something shifted in Luis. For the first time in years, he felt hope. not just a fleeting sense of it, but a deep, unshakable belief that things could get better. He straightened up, wiping his tears, and looked Ronaldo in the eye. "I won't waste this," he said firmly. "I promise you, I'll make this count." Ronaldo smiled, his eyes reflecting quiet pride. "I know you will." As they stepped back into the hallway, Luis turned to Ronaldo. "Why did you do all of this for me?" he asked, his voice filled with genuine curiosity. Ronaldo paused, then said, "Because when I was a kid, someone helped my family when we had nothing. They didn't have to, but they did. And I've never forgotten what that felt like. Now it's my turn to pass it on." Luis nodded, the weight of Ronaldo's words sinking in. This wasn't just about charity or goodwill. It was about a chain of kindness, a ripple effect that started long before today and would continue long after. As Ronaldo left, Luis stood in the doorway of his new home, watching the man who had changed his life walk away. But this time, Luis didn't feel alone. He felt seen, valued, and ready to rebuild. And he knew that this wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning of something far greater than he could have imagined. As Ronaldo walked out of the apartment building, Luis stood by the doorway, watching him disappear into the busy street. His eyes were still wet with tears, but for the first time in years, they weren't tears of despair. They were tears of hope. He turned back to look at the small but inviting apartment behind him, the reality of it all finally settling in. Inside, he sat down on the couch, running his hands over the soft fabric. It was a small gesture, but for Luis, it symbolized so much more. This was his space, a place where he didn't have to worry about the cold streets, the disapproving looks, or where his next meal would come from. For the first time in years, he felt safe. He looked down at his hands, calloused from years of work and then years of surviving on the streets. "How did this happen to me?" he whispered to himself. But deep down, he knew the answer. It was one man's simple decision: to see him, to truly see him, when the rest of the world looked away. Meanwhile, back at the community center, João, the director, was still processing what had just unfolded. "I've seen people come through here with all kinds of stories," he said to one of his colleagues. But what Ronaldo did today wasn't just about giving help. It was about restoring someone's faith in humanity. Word of Ronaldo's actions had already started to spread. The cafe owner, who had watched Ronaldo pay for Luis's meal, posted a heartfelt message on social media. "Kindness isn't about what you have. It's about what you're willing to give." Today, Cristiano Ronaldo reminded all of us what that truly means. The post quickly went viral, drawing thousands of comments from people inspired by the story. Even passers-by who had witnessed the interaction on the street couldn't help but feel moved. A young man who had been recording the scene on his phone shared the video with the caption, "Sometimes it's not about fame or money. It's about doing the right thing when no one expects you to." The video showed Ronaldo leading Luis into the cafe, their quiet conversation, and the moment Ronaldo handed him the key to the apartment. In just hours, it had reached millions of views. But for Ronaldo, it wasn't about the attention. It was about Luis, and the hope he had sparked in one man's life. As Luis sat in his new apartment that evening, a knock at the door startled him. He opened it to find João standing there, holding a small box. "Ronaldo asked me to drop this off," João said with a smile. Luis opened the box to find a handwritten note from Ronaldo. It read, "Luis, this is just the start. The rest is up to you. Keep going and never give up. You're worth it." Beneath the note was a simple soccer ball, brand new with Ronaldo's signature on it. Luis laughed softly, shaking his head. "He doesn't stop, does he?" he said, his voice filled with gratitude. João smiled. "That's the thing about people like him. They know the power of a single act of kindness." Luis placed the ball on a shelf, right where he could see it every day. It wasn't just a gift. It was a reminder that even when life seemed impossible, there were still people out there who cared enough to make a difference. That night, as Luis lay in his new bed, staring at the ceiling, he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The weight of the streets, the endless struggle, it wasn't gone entirely, but it was lighter now. And in its place was something new, a quiet belief that tomorrow could be better. And for everyone who had witnessed the story unfold, whether in person, through Joao's words, or online, it wasn't just about Luis or Ronaldo. It was about all of us, a reminder that no matter how small the gesture, kindness has the power to ripple outward, touching lives in ways we may never fully understand. This story reminds us of the profound impact of simple acts of kindness. Ronaldo's decision to stop, to notice, and to help Luis wasn't about grand gestures or public attention. It was about humanity, the ability to see someone in need and act without hesitation or judgment. In a world that often feels fast-paced and indifferent, this moment stands as a reminder that we all have the power to make a difference. Luis's journey isn't just his alone. It reflects the struggles many face in silence, hoping for someone to extend a hand. Ronaldo's actions show us that helping doesn't always require immense resources or fame. Sometimes it's as simple as seeing someone for who they are, listening to their story, and offering whatever support we can. The ripple effect of kindness is another lesson this story teaches. From the cafe owner to the community center staff, and even the bystanders who watched, each person who witnessed Ronaldo's actions felt inspired to do more in their own way. Kindness isn't just contagious, it's transformative. It has the power to change not only the lives of those who receive it, but also those who give it. And for Luis, the story didn't end with an apartment or a meal. It was about hope. The realization that no matter how far someone has fallen, there's always a chance to rise again. That belief, sparked by Ronaldo's kindness, will continue to shape Luis's life and the lives of those he touches moving forward. This story is a powerful reminder that every one of us can be a force for good. Whether it's a smile, a helping hand, or simply acknowledging someone who feels invisible, the smallest acts can have the biggest impact. In the end, it's not about who we are or what we have. It's about what we choose to give. If this story inspired you, take a moment to share it with someone who needs a reminder of the power of kindness. Let's spread this message of hope and humanity to as many people as we can. Don't forget to like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories that touch your heart and remind us all of what truly matters. Together, we can make the world a better place, one story at a time.